Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a topic that's honestly a total game changer for your practice, but crazy enough, it barely gets talked about in dental continuing ed. We're talking about clear aligner biomaterial science. If you've ever found yourself wondering why certain treatment plans just kind of go off the rails compared to what you simulated on screen, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to take a really close look at the materials that literally dictate your clinical outcomes.
So let's start with a question we've all asked. Why do so many aligner cases end in refinement? It's super frustrating, right? Every single refinement you file, every tracking issue you have to fix, and every time a patient comes back with a tray that just doesn't fit anymore, it forces us to ask that exact question. Now, it's really easy to just blame tracking failures on the patient not wearing them, or maybe a slightly overambitious treatment plan. But here's the thing. What the data and the material science actually show us is that this is often a fundamental material failure issue. It's pretty simple when you think about it. If the material stops working, the teeth stop moving.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the science of tooth movement. Then the single-layer trade-off. After that, we're decoding aligner materials, followed by the tri-layer architecture. And finally, precision manufacturing and planning.
So, starting right off with Section 1, the science of tooth movement. Let's establish our clinical baseline.
You know, at its core, a clear aligner moves teeth through one main biomechanical principle, and that is elastic memory. Basically, the tray is fabricated to a target position that's just a tiny bit ahead of where the patient's teeth currently are. So when the tray is seated, the material stretches, and as that material fights to return to its original, fabricated shape, it generates the mechanical force that actually drives the tooth movement. That elastic memory, that is the biological engine behind every single clear aligner case you've described.
Now, there are three distinct material parameters that determine exactly how well that engine works. First up is force magnitude at insertion. That's how much force is applied the second the tray is seated. If it's too high, your patient is uncomfortable and they probably won't wear it. If it's too low, you're just not going to stimulate bone remodeling. Second, we have force decay rate. This is how quickly the material loses its elastic energy. And third, dimensional stability under load. Basically, how well the tray holds its shape against the tongue, chewing, and biting forces. I really want to emphasize that second point for a moment. Force decay rate is absolutely crucial. It's one of the most clinically significant variables in your treatment. Yet, for some reason, nobody ever talks about it.
Let's move on to Section 2 and see why relying on just one material creates an inherent clinical compromise, the single-layer trade-off.
Here is the issue. If you build an aligner out of just one material, you are literally forcing a compromise. It's kind of like trying to build a house using only glass or only concrete. You obviously need different properties for different functions, right? If you increase a single material's stiffness, sure, you get better initial force, but you pay for it with lower patient comfort and a way higher risk of the tray cracking under occlusal load. On the flip side, if you reduce the stiffness to make it more comfortable, you completely compromise dimensional stability. The aligner might just sort of adapt to where the teeth are right now, rather than actively pushing them toward the target. The physics of a single polymer just can't give you both structural stability and elastomeric flexibility at the exact same time.
Which brings us to Section 3, decoding aligner materials. Let's take a deep dive into the actual polymers dominating the industry.
We're going to start with PETG. This is the industry default material. It's cost-effective, it's everywhere, and it processes predictably. But clinically, it has some pretty severe limitations. It really only offers moderate dimensional stability. But the biggest issue by far is that it suffers from rapid force decay. We're talking a massive drop in force, within just the first 48 to 72 hours of a patient wearing a PETG aligner. It basically just runs out of gas. By the middle of a standard 1 to 2 week wear cycle, that force delivery has often plummeted to subtherapeutic levels. What that means for you is the last several days your patient is wearing that tray, it's doing almost nothing. It's contributing very little active tooth movement.
Now, what's really interesting about this is what happens when we contrast PETG against a modified polymer called PCTG. We're not just talking about a slightly better version here. PCTG is a structurally superior class of material. Where PETG loses optical clarity and gets stained super easily, PCTG stays crystal clear and actively fights off stains from stuff like coffee and mustard. But here is the critical part. PCTG has a much higher glass transition temperature. Think about it. The human mouth goes through massive thermal excursions every single day. A hot cup of coffee can easily push oral temperatures past 60 degrees Celsius. At those temps, PETG can actually microdeform. It loses its shape, and boom, there goes your tracking. PCTG, on the other hand, handles that heat beautifully. It maintains its structural integrity and its force profile far, far more reliably.
But at the end of the day, even PCG is still a rigid thermoplastic. And that brings us to TPU, or thermoplastic polyurethane. This stuff is a real game changer. TPU is elastomeric, meaning it behaves a lot more like a rubber band. So instead of this huge, uncomfortable initial force spike followed by a rapid crash, TPU stores energy totally differently. It offers a sustained, graduated force delivery over time. Plus, it gives a really low, comfortable insertion force for the patient. But here's the catch. TPU is way too flexible to be used all by itself. If you tried to make an entire liner out of just TPU, it would have zero-dimensional stability. You couldn't control tooth movement at all. It absolutely requires structural support to work.
So, how do we solve this? Let's transition to Section 4 and see how we combine these materials, the tri-layer architecture.
And this brilliantly illustrates the solution, the ClearPath Tri-Layer architecture. It uses a super precise 30-40-30 ratio. You've got a 30% outer layer of PCTG, a 40% middle layer of TPU, and a 30% inner layer of PCTG. By taking that elastomeric TPU core and sandwiching it between two rigid, structurally sound layers of PCTG, you create a unified system. And this system behaves entirely differently than any single material ever could on its own.
Let's break down exactly why this architectural assignment is so powerful. Basically, we're giving each clinical function to the exact right material. The outer layer uses ClearPath's proprietary clear quartz PCTG. That layer is designed to face the outside world. It gives you brilliant optical clarity, it resists staining, and it's actually 4 times more tear-resistant than conventional polymers. Then you have the inner layer, which is also clear quartz PCTG. This is your structural foundation. It's in direct contact with the teeth, holding its dimensional accuracy against all those biting forces. And right there in the middle, that's the TPU core. That is the engine. It modulates to force, ensuring this beautiful, sustained, consistent pressure across the entire wear period, all while keeping insertion totally comfortable for the patient. You're getting an advanced performance envelope here that is literally physically impossible to get with just one layer.
But great material science only matters if it's executed well. Let's transition to our final section, precision manufacturing and planning.
To make sure those materials actually perform in the mouth, ClearPath uses a highly controlled 6-step manufacturing process inside their advanced drop license facility. It's a really incredible linear journey. It starts with advanced thermoforming. Then, they use controlled anterior thinning to perfectly balance aesthetics and strength. After that, uniform ceramic heating makes sure there are absolutely no warping hotspots. From there, automated CNC finishing and gingival scalloping cut every single tray with absolute computerized perfection. And finally, the whole thing is sealed up in automated sterile packaging.
Now, what does all that rigorous processing actually achieve? An astonishing manufacturing precision of 50 microns. To put that number into perspective for a second, the typical tooth movement you plan per aligner stage is usually just 0.15 to 0.25 millimeters, right? So if your manufacturing varies wildly, the aligner simply isn't going to match your plan. Manufacturing down to a 50-micron tolerance means the aligner your patient actually receives is essentially an exact physical replica of your digital treatment plan. It dramatically shrinks the gap between what you planned on the screen and the actual biological delivery in the chair. And hey, precision manufacturing doesn't mean slow manufacturing. ClearPath actually maintains a rapid 48-hour turnaround time from the moment you submit a case to the moment the aligner is dispatched. This is huge because predictable logistics support your practice's clinical workflow. It totally eliminates those frustrating delays that can extend overall case timelines and, let's be honest, really annoy your patients. Now, the Clarix aligner itself sits at the center of a much broader clinical ecosystem that's designed to support your practice. Even before the aligner is made, your case runs through CP Smart 2.0. This is an AI-powered planning platform that simulates tooth movement to help minimize refinements while absolutely keeping you in total control. The whole workflow is managed through a super intuitive, all-in-one dentist's portal. And crucially, these aren't just marketing claims. ClearPath Clarix is backed by some serious regulatory credentials. It's FDA 510(k) cleared, DRAP approved in Pakistan, and holds approvals across 8 international markets, along with being strictly HIPAA and GDPR compliant for your patient's data.
When you take this level of material science and you combine it with rigorous manufacturing and planning, you get actual real-world clinical success. I love how Professor Dr. Waistarani, a certified consultant orthodontist, puts it. He said, "Working with ClearPath aligners has made a noticeable difference in my practice. The treatment planning support is precise and well-structured, and it reflects directly in the results. My patients are satisfied and confident with their outcomes." That right there, that is a result of engineered predictability.
So the crucial point is really clear when we look at the objective clinical comparison. Single-layer PETG gives you that high initial force spike, followed by rapid decay. The tri-layer architecture, that gives you sustained, consistent force. PETG tracking can be super variable, but tri-layer tracking is significantly improved. Ultimately, the tri-layer system gives you enhanced crack resistance, lower insertion force, and a significantly reduced frequency of refinements. The whole point of the tri-layer system is to keep the case on track, from day one of the tray all the way to the end of the wear cycle.
Which brings us to one final, provocative question for your practice. What biomaterial science is behind the aligner you prescribe right now? Are you working with materials that are actively fighting against your treatment plan, or materials that are engineered to support it? Predictable cases and fewer refinements, they don't just happen by accident. They are engineered. I'd highly encourage you to evaluate the tools you're currently using. To learn more or to register as a certified provider and really upgrade the science in your clinic, head on over to clearpathortho.com/partner with us. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and here's to more predictable clinical outcomes